So this storm that hit the Philippines saved the world. Now that is a crazy, crazy statement actually. And I am excited to find out what that was, exactly why that saved the world. I mean, there's a lot of questions, but I feel like a lot of it is going to be answered here. Come join me. Let's see this together, man. The Philippines is wonderful. Loved being there. We'll go back very soon again. Just thinking about it. Anyways, let's see this together.
Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted with such catastrophic force in 1991. Typhoon Yunya hit almost simultaneously. During that time,
imagine that. And that's the thing is, like, I've posted so many videos already on my channel about typhoons that happen in the Philippines and the way that they would treat that. Of course, typhoons are almost nothing, even though casualties happen. I'll emphasize this again. So many casualties happen in the Philippines, and, you know, people who lose their lives, rest in peace. This is, you know, a horrible tragedy. But the reality is the way that they take these tragedies and make it into something else and make a fun of it or try to enjoy it, because that's what life is. You know, you can't just, if something miserable happens, you can't just sit and be miserable. That's how they would take it. They would sit and try to do something about it in terms of just being happy that they're there and being able to experience something, right? But the reason I mention this is because no wonder they would do that with the Philippines, right? Or in the Philippines. Look at this. In 1991, a typhoon and a volcano Are you guys? Oh my goodness. Like, at the Philippines, bro, they're like, yo, worse is as worse it can get, bro. Like, it is what it is. That's literally how the Philippines is, bro.
And many observers thought, how unlucky could this country be? But
bro.
What if we told you that this typhoon actually saved the world from a more serious disaster?
Really?
Now, before you quickly scratch your head in disbelief, let's get back in time first when it happened. Mount Pinatubo is an active volcano located in the Zambales Mountains on the northern island of Luzon. Before its major eruption in June 1991, signs of activity first appeared on April 2nd, with small steam explosions.
A day after my birthday? I was born on April 1st, by the way. A day after my birthday. But obviously this year I wasn't born. I was born in 2001. You already start getting signs of it. What was the procedures happening? Were they trying to tell other countries and they didn't listen? Why do I feel like that's what happened?
In the weeks that followed, earthquakes shook the area intermittently, their frequency changing without warning. Until that day, scientists regarded Pinatubo as a quiet volcano that had last been active sometime within the past 1,000 years.
Oh no.
It had even been considered for geothermal energy development, but the project never moved forward. The mountain was covered in thick jungle, and for generations, it had been home to the indigenous Ida people.
No.
They lived off the land, moving through the forests that had long provided them with food and shelter. Meanwhile, in the surrounding community, most residents and even those in nearby military bases knew little about this volcano. However, everything changed on June 15th. On that fateful day, the locals and the world witnessed the most powerful eruption of the 20th century.
Oh my goodness,
in the early
bro.
morning of that day, the pressure that had built up beneath Mount Pinatubo for centuries finally released. In one sudden and powerful explosion, the volcano erupted with full force.
Isn't it crazy how volcanoes work, by the way? The way he showed that, wasn't it like tectonic plates almost that rub against each other, create that pressure, and then it just pressurizes right down the middle of that volcano and explodes? That is so, because the earth has so much magma inside, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody who knows, like, has so much magma inside, and when those trenches start moving, it's kind of how earthquake happens as well. But a volcano has almost the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's insane how it works, bro. And the Philippines has so many different things like this happening. And the way they deal with it, bro. I'll go back to that again, but
Instead of rising into the sky as a towering vertical column, the eruption spread outward. It formed a colossal cloud over 10 kilometers. It was so wide that it engulfed the nearby Zambales Mountains. This marked the start of Mount Pinatubo's Plinian eruption. As if one catastrophe weren't enough, the same day brought another blow.
Wow, dude.
Typhoon Yunya, known locally as Diding, swept into the country with winds reaching 145 kilometers per hour. It was as if the forces of nature had conspired to see just how much the nation could endure in a single day.
Yeah, quite literally. This is like the craziest thing. I wonder, anybody who was alive for this, who survived this in the Philippines, explain that experience. Please tell me that experience. Did you really think that, the world, man, how could they do this to us? Or were you more so like optimistic already? Because I know the Philippines is full of optimistic people, but this must have really broke you down. This is insane, man. 2 back-to-back and crazy ones at that. It isn't a little small hurricane. This is a crazy typhoon and then a crazy volcano exploding after thousands of years.
Typhoons aren't something new to the country.
Yeah, that too.
As being in the Pacific Ring of Fire, almost 20 typhoons visit the country per year. But what was different was the convergence of a typhoon and an eruption on the same day and the same place. When Mount Pinatubo's climactic eruption struck at 1:42 p.m., the typhoon's eye was just 70 kilometers from the crater.
Oh my God.
Its counterclockwise winds altered the course of the ashfall. When the typhoon's heavy rains mixed with Pinatubo's volcanic ash, the region was thrown into near-total darkness. It was like the scenes from apocalyptic movies. Strong winds carried the ash as far as 160 kilometers to Manila, forcing the shutdown of almost every airport in the country. The heavy rains triggered massive lahars that poured down the slopes between rivers. These lahars demolished buildings and wiped out every bridge, cutting off vital transportation links. Widespread flooding worsened the disaster as rivers overflowed across Luzon. In Pampanga, the storm swept away at least 170 homes, leaving whole communities in ruins and many families without shelter. At first, it appeared the typhoon only intensified the eruption's impact. The strong winds spread ash far beyond the expected areas.
I was going to say that too. Like the ash that's in the air would get pushed by these 140 kilometer per hour winds. It said, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but pushing that much wind with ash in the air, that combination, man, is just crazy stuff.
Covering thousands of kilometers away. Fine ash traveled as far as the Indian Ocean, and satellites tracked the ash cloud as it circled the globe multiple times. But what if the typhoon was, in some way, a hidden blessing not only for the country, but for the world? This might sound unlikely at first, especially considering that it contributed to the loss of lives. To understand why scientists saw the typhoon as a hidden blessing, we need to look at what could have happened if it hadn't been there during Mount Pinatubo's explosion. The eruption released large amounts of hydrogen chloride gas along with ash and magma. If this gas had reached the stratosphere, it would have reacted with chlorine from man-made chemicals like CFCs and caused significant damage to the ozone layer, which protects the planet from the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays. Fortunately, these worst-case outcomes were avoided because of the typhoon's timing.
That is crazy. Yo, think about that. Think about that. The typhoons that consistently hit the Philippines, something that always happens, something that is devastating, that the Philippines already flipped on its head, basically being like, you know what, we're just going to live with it, we'll swim in it, whatever. That becomes an actual saving grace during one of the scariest and worst volcano eruptions of all time. Right? Because, any volcano erupting is scary, but this is like one of the biggest ones that could really mess up the world, clearly, because of entering the stratosphere, like he explained. But one of the ones that haven't even exploded in 1,000 years, the typhoon comes on the day after, pushing it to, that is crazy. That's like one of those coincidences that, is it really a coincidence? You know what I mean?
As the typhoon moved through the eruption's plume, its rains removed most of the hydrogen chloride before it could reach the upper atmosphere and harm the ozone layer. Sunlight includes a variety of light waves, but much of the ultraviolet or UV radiation is blocked by our atmosphere before it reaches the Earth's surface.
That could damage us.
However, 2 types of UV rays do make it through: UVA and UVB. Although UVB makes up only a small fraction of the UV radiation that reaches us, it poses the greatest risk to living organisms.
Skin cancer, right?
Now, going back to our main question, what would have happened if the ozone layer had significantly thinned due to the eruption of Mount Pinatubo? The straightforward answer is that more UVB radiation would have reached the Earth's surface. High levels of UVB radiation can be very dangerous for people. Research has shown that it is a key cause of skin cancer including malignant melanoma, the most serious type.
Oh,
it also
dude.
raises the likelihood of developing cataracts, which can cause blindness. But the impact wouldn't just be on humans. UVB can harm crop yields that could result in food shortages.
Oh, yeah, because it would also be way too... if UVB gets through, it would be too bright as well, which is what can cause cataracts. And on top of that, obviously, it'd be way too hot in general. Even though UVB comes through, it increases heat. Correct me if I'm wrong. It increases heat. And obviously, crops can't grow in such way too much heat to the point where it can, like, cause a forest fire or something.
Higher levels of UVB radiation can harm crops by damaging their cells and interfering with photosynthesis.
Oh, there's that too.
This reduces how efficiently plants convert sunlight into energy and slows their growth, resulting in less overall plant mass and lower yields. UVB exposure can also weaken plants, making them more vulnerable to diseases and environmental challenges. Together, these effects can reduce crop production and increase the risk of food shortages.
Yeah, that's horrible.
But the danger of UVB radiation isn't limited to life on land.
No.
It reaches the oceans too. It begins with phytoplankton, the microscopic plants that form the foundation of the entire marine ecosystem. Living on the sunlit surface of the ocean, they would have been the first to face the strong UVB rays if the ozone layer had thinned.
And wouldn't the deeper ones survive though? The real down in the deeps. I'm talking about the, what is it? Something trench, like way down where it's like pitch black. You can't even get there because of the pressure of the water. Wouldn't they suffer something bad as well in the future? Because I think they eat things that the top ones have eaten or something like that. Along those lines, correct me if I'm wrong once again, but you know, like I think that it affects almost everything. It's almost like a domino effect. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's what would happen with certain things like that. But correct me if I'm wrong, of course.
Decline in their numbers ripples through the marine food chain, starving microscopic plants that form the foundation of the entire marine ecosystem.
Yeah, like these, the jellyfish.
Living on the sunlit surface of the ocean, they would have been the first to face the strong UVB rays if the ozone layer had thinned. Intense UVB can damage their cellular structures, impairing their ability to photosynthesize and reproduce. A decline in their numbers ripples through the marine food chain, starving zooplankton and fish larvae, and eventually impacting top predators like fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. This in turn would put both our food supply and the livelihoods of millions who depend on the ocean at risk. And if you think that's the end of its impact, think again. Phytoplankton also help keep our planet's balance in check. A steep drop in their numbers would disrupt the Earth's carbon cycle.
Wow.
These microscopic life forms serve as potent carbon sponges, removing vast amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Without them, this essential defense against climate change would crumble, amplifying its already severe impacts. All things considered, if not for Typhoon Yunya, we might still be feeling the scars of Pinatubo's fury even 36 years later.
That is crazy.
What seemed like a cruel twist of fate in 1991 was, in truth, an unexpected act of salvation. Hence, we can confidently say that a typhoon just saved the day. But what are your thoughts about this?
That is insane.
If you'd love to support our channel, please.
Yo, I think that is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. Because the world is filled with many, many things that happen, you know, nature and tragedy. But there is times where you can look at it from a different perspective. And not even just, you don't even have to look at it from a different perspective. Look at it quite logically. If that didn't happen, the storm would have affected or not the storm, the eruption would have affected so much more. That is insane. That is terrifying, right? If that didn't happen, imagine. Holy moly, dude. That's low-key scary, man. I love that video. That was crazy. Yo, if you guys got any more videos like this, please link it over. Loved it. That was crazy. Hey, till next time, y'all. Peace.
How good you been living? Wait, how good you been living? I've been living too good for you. I've been living too. Did what I did and I do it again. Every move that I make, I ain't feeling repent. Nobody believes to believe it's a friend, and you question your moves like you really won't end.